Good afternoon and welcome to the Sphirewall Rebirth 0.9.8 release demo. In this short video we will go over what is included in the latest release of Sphirewall, what enhancements were made, what improvements were made, and what you can expect to see from us in the very near future. Okay. So for those of you who are not familiar with Sphirewall, Sphirewall is a user-centric network firewall and router. It is built on the philosophy of easy use, it's modular and extensible for your own needs, and is a complete replacement for IP tables in Linux. So the basic idea behind Sphirewall is that you are able to set up a network and control and limit, and also get detailed information around users rather than particular network devices. Of course, you can also do the same thing with every network device, just like you can in a traditional firewall, but we offer the added ability to do so on a user and on a group base. So you are able to set up roles and groups for particular users, and you're able to then limit and grant them access to various resources, including the internet. So Sphirewall is a great replacement for your capture portal system, and of course it's open source and the only open source solution of its kind. We are built on the philosophy of easy use. So the intention with our system is that you can get it up and running in a couple of minutes, and it's extremely easy and intuitive for you to use. We are modular and extendable, and the reason behind this is simple. If you take a normal firewall and you try and stick it into your existing architecture, quite often you have to build your existing architecture around that. We don't want users of Sphirewall to have to do that. We would like a user of Sphirewall to be able to come in, get straight into it, and then they can use our API and our functionality to add and enhance their network rather than to rebuild their entire network. And of course, Sphirewall is a complete replacement for IP tables. We don't offer all the functionality that IP tables currently supports, however, we don't use IP tables, and that, as a result, enables us to perform and give you, the user, some pretty cool features which are not currently available anywhere else, apart from if you purchase a rather expensive corporate solution. Okay, so the Rebirth release. The Rebirth release is a result of months of refactoring. Basically, I was away from the project for about a year, and I decided to come back to the project, and as a result of that, there were a few things which I thought definitely needed to change. With this refactoring, we were really focusing on ease of use, especially for the developers, and quality. We had to remove the bandwidth and reporting modules to allow reworking, and one of the reasons for that is that there was a few nasty bugs in there, and we wanted to kind of just get rid of it and re-look at what users want in reporting. Okay. So the major improvements that were in this build of Sphirewall. The biggest improvement and the most noticeable thing, if you come from the development side, is actually the introduction of a JSON API. In the past, we used Thrift to communicate between different processes, and this was extremely cumbersome and problemsome for developers and also our users. We found ourselves having to actually package Thrift for Debian, as it is not available in any repositories, including backports, and we just had massive issues with it. Okay, the second improvement is the introduction of Python into the system. So Python is great for string manipulation, and as a result we decided to use it for the command line management console. The next big improvement is extended testing. So with this release I have made a real focus on increasing the unit test coverage within the codebase, and also increasing the testing that we performed before the release. So all functionality within the system has now been well tested, and the API is also well tested. Okay, the next major improvement was a human readable configuration file. There were several reasons for this. One is just a simple debugging, and we actually removed the existing configuration completely and have now made a JSON configuration file which gets generated automatically on the first run of Sphirewall. So you're not required to perform any configuration before running Sphirewall for the first time. You can of course do so if you'd like, but by default it will create a configuration file called sphirewall.conf in either your etc directory or your local working environment. And this file contains all your configuration. So it is completely human readable. You can chop and change it, and we believe that it kind of gives us the ability to help our users out a bit better, and also it makes the system more manageable for someone in production. The next major noticeable improvement is the introduction of an MVC framework in the PHP management interface. So our PHP management interface was a bit chappy. It wasn't so structured, and I have introduced somewhat of a framework in there. It's not external; it's completely developed by us, and it should enable developers and users to navigate better around there. It also enables us to perform unit testing on the PHP management interface, although that hasn't been started yet, but it will come in the future. Okay. So back to the JSON API, because this is the most significant enhancement in this version of Sphirewall. It is extremely easy and to read and to create. So the idea behind this JSON API was that an external user of Sphirewall could gain access to information for their use. So say you have a capture portal scenario and you're wanting to keep track of your users in your internet cafe. You are able to build a website which actually authenticates and logs your users and controls all of that just by interacting with the JSON API. You don't need to use anything that we provide. You can do, of course, but you can otherwise just simply throw some JSON at the service and it will respond with all the information. Now let's take a look at an example here. We have in the blue and green and red a small query. So the first argument is actually the request URL. So this is quite simply asking, telling this firewall which piece of information you want. So we're looking at the firewall subsystem, we're looking at the ACLs, which is the access control lists, and we would like a list of all the ACLs. The second argument you have there is a token for authentication. So this token is received when you first perform an authentication request with an appropriate user, and you need to then provide it for all your interactions with Sphirewall through the API. And the third is additional arguments. So some API calls have arguments. Say you're going to add a rule to the firewall ACLs list, then you would add the information into the args list. And here is our response. As you can see again, it's very human readable. The idea here is that someone should be able to just pick this up and run with it. So we have the first guy is a response code. If it's 0, then it's okay. If it's -1, then an error has occurred and you can look for an error message. And as you can see inside the response header, you have the ACL lists that we have at the moment. So you have first the NAT list, which has no rules, and then you have the normal list, which has a couple of rules. Okay, and yeah, that's all in regards to the JSON API. It is at the moment unencrypted, so it would be advisable not to allow it through outside a local machine, but in the future we look to enabling SSL encryption on that to prevent people from eavesdropping. Okay, bug fixes in this release. This release spanned over the space of about 8 months. I was working on and off on it, and it was a very big one. So as you can imagine, there were hundreds of small bug fixes included. And as there was a lot of refactoring, we also removed a lot of bugs which are in the system, just through the nature of ripping out code. Okay, but it's worth noting that there were no major bugs which were fixed in this release, and I don't believe there are any major bugs outstanding at the moment. Okay, and looking forward to the future. So the next sprint, we will be focusing on bandwidth monitoring and reporting again. This is the big task. We hope to include getting upload and download information per hour for every user and also every internal host into the system, and with that some nice graphs. We also hope to include basic round-robin load balancing. So this is a feature which is included with most firewall systems, and of course we want to stick it in there. This will then allow us in the very near future to set up load balancing based on users, which could be an interesting feature. And of course the new Python CLI interface needs some more functions. So at the moment it only supports some very basic commands, and we want to extend that to be able to support almost 99% of the system's functionality. So that will be the next sprint, and it will be in approximately 3 weeks' time, ready for release. Okay, how to get involved. We would love more contributors, and it's quite easy to get involved with Sphirewall now. You can do one of two things. Simply check out a Jira page, which we use for bug tracking and task tracking, and you can have a look at our upcoming release and see what tasks are still required. Or you can join us on IRC. So we have a channel on Freenode. If you join irc.freenode.net/#Sphirewall, you will get at least a couple of us always hang out in that room, and we would really like to speak to you. Okay, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Cheers.